6 months to transform a farmer into a weapon. 6 months before darkness consumes everything. But as Kale begins his brutal training in the hidden sanctum, dark omens spread across the kingdom of Eldoria. Animals fleeing in terror, shadows moving against the light, and whispers of villages disappearing in the night. The Shadow King's forces are already moving. Time is running out. And the hardest lesson Kale must learn is this: power without sacrifice is nothing but a dream. Pain was an excellent teacher, Kale discovered. Better than any lecture or demonstration. When Master Aldrich's training staff cracked against his ribs for the 7th time that morning, the lesson became crystal clear. He was pathetically, dangerously unprepared for the war ahead. "Dead again," Aldrich announced, his voice carrying across the training hall. "That's 4 times in 10 minutes. The Shadow King's weakest foot soldier would have gutted you 3 times over by now." Kale gasped for breath, clutching his side where the impact had landed. The staff wasn't ordinary wood, it was inscribed with runes that made each strike feel like it penetrated deeper than flesh, reaching into the energy that Lyris had awakened in him. Every blow didn't just hurt his body, it disrupted the fledgling power trying to take root in his core. 5 days had passed since he'd arrived at the Sanctum of Echoes. 5 days that felt like 5 years. He'd barely slept, had eaten only what was shoved in front of him during brief respites, and had discovered muscles he didn't know existed solely through the exquisite agony of their overuse. "Again," Aldrich commanded. Kale forced himself upright, taking the defensive stance he'd been taught. Feet shoulder-width apart, knees slightly bent, weight on the balls of his feet, hands raised with palms open. The other students, 23 young men and women who'd been training here for months or years, watched from the edges of the hall. Some with sympathy, most with cool assessment. He was the lost prince, the great hope, the last heir of the most powerful luminary bloodline. And he couldn't last 30 seconds against a 70-year-old man with a stick. Aldrich moved. Despite his age and graying beard, the High Master flowed like water, like wind, like something that had transcended the limitations of flesh. The staff whistled through the air in a strike aimed at Kale's head. Kale tried to dodge, pulling on the power inside him to enhance his speed the way Aldrich had demonstrated. For a moment, he felt it, that silver energy responding, flooding into his limbs, and time seemed to slow just slightly. He was going to make it. He was going to. The power slipped from his grasp like water through cupped hands. Time snapped back to normal speed. The staff changed trajectory mid-swing with impossible precision, and Kale found himself flat on his back, the world spinning, Aldrich's weathered face looking down at him with disappointment. "You reached for the power like a drowning man grabbing at waves," the master said. "Desperate. Grasping. That's not how this works. The Luminari don't take power, we become one with it. It's not a tool you pick up and put down. It's supposed to be as natural as breathing." "I'm trying," Kale gasped. "Trying isn't good enough. The Shadow King's forces won't wait for you to figure it out. They're already moving." Aldrich extended a hand and pulled Kale to his feet with surprising strength. "You feel it, don't you? In your bones. In your blood. Something's wrong with the world." Kale nodded. He had felt it, even before arriving at the sanctum. A wrongness in the air, a chill that had nothing to do with temperature, a sense of creeping dread that worsened with each passing day. "The barrier is failing faster than we predicted," Aldrich continued, his voice dropping so only Kale could hear. "Reports are coming in from across Eldoria. Dark omens. Unnatural phenomena. Things that haven't been seen in this realm since the last Shadow War, 300 years ago." Before Kale could respond, the doors to the training hall burst open. A woman strode in, tall and commanding, wearing the silver-trimmed robes of a sanctum messenger. Her face was pale, eyes wide with barely controlled fear. "Master Aldrich," she said, her voice tight. The oracle has had another vision. She requires your presence immediately. All senior staff. Aldrich's expression darkened. How bad? She's asking for the prince as well. Every eye in the hall turned to Cale. He felt the weight of their stares, hope, skepticism, resentment, curiosity. He was still just a farm boy in his own mind, but to them, he was a symbol. A prophecy. A weapon that might save them all or fail catastrophically. Come, Aldrich said, already moving toward the door. The rest of you, continue your drills. Seraphine, you're in charge. A young woman near the front, sharp-featured with hair like midnight and eyes like chips of ice, nodded and immediately began organizing the other students. Cale had learned her name on the first day. Seraphine Night Whisper, one of the most talented students in the sanctum, daughter of 2 Luminari survivors who'd hidden in Eldoria for decades. She was brilliant, skilled, and made no secret of her disdain for the untrained prince who'd arrived with legendary bloodline but no ability to back it up. Cale followed Aldrich through corridors of crystal and stone, deeper into the sanctum than he'd yet been allowed. The architecture here was ancient, clearly not built by human hands. The walls themselves seemed to pulse with latent energy, and the air tasted of ozone and something sweeter, like starlight, if starlight had a flavor. They descended a spiral staircase that seemed to go on forever, passing levels that branched off into other chambers. Cale caught glimpses of libraries with books that floated freely through the air, of forges where weapons glowed with inner light, of meditation chambers where students sat suspended in midair, surrounded by swirling patterns of silver energy. Finally, they reached a chamber at what must have been the very heart of the sanctum. The room was spherical, its walls made of the same seamless black stone as the platform in the Whispering Woods. Floating in the center, suspended by nothing Cale could see, was an old woman. Her eyes were milky white, completely pupilless, but Cale had the unsettling sensation that she could see far more than ordinary eyes ever could. Her hair floated around her head as if she were underwater, silver streaked with pure white. Runes covered every inch of her exposed skin, glowing faintly with soft blue light. Oracle Thessir, Aldrich bowed deeply. You called for us. I did. Her voice was like wind through hollow caves, multiple tones layered impossibly over each other. The visions are becoming clearer, stronger. The future solidifies with each passing hour, and what I see. She trailed off, her sightless eyes fixing on Cale with uncomfortable precision. Ah, the lost prince. Come closer, child. Let me see what you carry. Cale approached hesitantly. Being near the oracle felt like standing next to a lightning storm. Energy crackled across his skin, making every hair stand on end. Thessir reached out, and though she didn't touch him physically, Cale felt phantom fingers press against his forehead. His vision exploded into light and shadow. He saw a great city burning, not Eldengard, somewhere else, somewhere that existed in a different layer of reality. He saw armies marching through the gaps between worlds, creatures of living darkness with too many limbs and eyes that burned with hateful intelligence. He saw a throne of bones and shadow, and sitting upon it, a figure that hurt to perceive, as if darkness had achieved consciousness and crowned itself king. The Shadow King turned his head, and though this was just a vision, just a prophecy, Cale felt the weight of that terrible gaze fall upon him. So, the whelp lives, a voice spoke directly into his mind, cold as the space between stars. How delightful. I thought I would have to settle for conquering your realm unopposed. But this is much better. I will enjoy breaking you as I broke your mother. No. Cale jerked back, severing the connection. He stumbled, and Aldrich caught him. Steady, the master said. Thessir, what did you show him? What he needed to see, the oracle replied. The enemy knows he lives now. The moment Lyris broke the seal, the moment his power awakened, he became visible to those who seek the luminary light. The Shadow King has turned his attention to Eldoria. How long do we have? Aldrich's voice was grim. Days. Perhaps a week. His forces are already slipping through the cracks in the barrier. Small incursions, testing our defenses, sowing fear and chaos. But soon. She rotated slowly in her suspension, gesturing with one gnarled hand. The air in the chamber rippled, and suddenly Cale was looking at what seemed to be a window into the outside world. The kingdom of Eldoria spread before him like a map made real. He could see the capital city of Eldengard, its white towers gleaming in sunlight. But surrounding the city, creeping closer with each passing moment, were shadows. Not natural shadows cast by clouds or mountains, but living darkness that moved with purpose, consuming light wherever it touched. Villages along the northern border have gone silent, Theseus said. Messengers sent to investigate don't return. Animals flee the forests as if driven by invisible predators. The night lasts longer than it should, and the stars are disappearing one by one. The court must be warned, Aldrich said. King Aldrich must mobilize the army. I have sent word. 3 times. The royal court believes we are alarmists spreading panic. They think the reports are exaggerations, hysteria, peasant superstition. The oracle's laugh was bitter. They have forgotten the old wars. Forgotten what true darkness looks like. They will remember soon enough. Cale watched the spreading shadows in the vision with growing horror. How many people are in those villages? The ones that went silent. Thousands, Theseus said quietly. Men, women, children, all gone. Whether dead or taken, we don't know. The Shadow King has many uses for captured souls. Rage flared in Cale's chest, hot and sudden. We have to help them. We have to do something. We are, Aldrich said firmly. We're preparing you. One untrained prince rushing to fight is suicide. You'd be dead or corrupted within minutes, and the last hope of the Luminari would be extinguished. So we just let them die. We make sure their deaths aren't meaningless. Aldrich's hand on Cale's shoulder was heavy. This is war, boy. Real war. Not the romantic tales told by bards. War means sacrifice. It means choosing who lives and who dies based on cold calculation. Those people are already lost. You are not. And as brutal as it sounds, you're more important. The words felt like ash in Cale's mouth, but he couldn't argue with the logic. He could barely summon his power for more than a few seconds. What could he do against forces that consumed entire villages? There's more, Theseus said, and her tone made both men turn. My vision showed me 3 paths forward, 3 possible futures. In 2 of them, the Shadow King triumphs. Eldoria falls. Then the surrounding kingdoms. Then all realms, consumed one by one until only darkness remains. And the 3rd path? Cale asked, though he wasn't sure he wanted to know. In the 3rd path, you stand at the gates of twilight with a weapon that has not been seen since your mother wielded it. The Starblade, forged in the heart of a dying sun, capable of cutting through the fabric of reality itself. With it, you face the Shadow King. And... She paused. The vision fragments there. I cannot see the outcome. Only that this is the only path where victory is even possible. The Starblade was lost when the Silver City fell, Aldrich said. No one knows where it ended up. Actually, Theseus smiled, and it was a strange expression on her ancient face. I do. Or rather, I know who can lead us to it. But retrieving it will be its own epic undertaking. It rests in a place between places, guarded by a being that even the Shadow King fears to disturb. Let me go, Cale said immediately. Tell me where it is. I'll find it. No, Aldrich and Theseus said in unison. "You're not ready," Aldrich continued. "You can barely sustain your power for 30 seconds. The journey to the Starblade would kill you before you got halfway there." "Then what do I do?" Cale's frustration boiled over. "Train while people die. Hide while darkness spreads. I have power. I can feel it inside me. If I could just control it." Aldrich interrupted. "Focus it. Sustain it. Yes, those would be excellent starting points. Power without discipline is just a faster way to die." Theseus descended from her floating position, her feet touching the ground with unexpected grace. She approached Cale, her blind eyes studying him. "You're struggling because you're fighting yourself. The seal your mother placed on you wasn't just external protection, it was internal as well. Your human half and your luminary half have been separated for 17 years. They don't know how to work together. You're trying to command power while half your soul doesn't even acknowledge it exists. How do I fix that?" Integration. Acceptance. You have to stop being Cale the farmer boy who happens to have magic, and become Cale who is magic, who is light made flesh. It's not about learning. It's about remembering what you were born knowing. She turned to Aldrich. "He needs the ritual of awakening. Full immersion." Aldrich's expression darkened. "That's dangerous. Most candidates don't survive it. We usually wait until they have at least a year of basic training." "We don't have a year. We have days, maybe a week before the Shadow King's forces are strong enough to assault the sanctum directly. This place is hidden by ancient wards, but they're tied to the barrier between realms. When it falls, we'll be exposed. If the ritual kills him, we lose everything. If we wait, we lose everything anyway." Theseus looked at Cale. "The choice is yours, Prince. Risk death now for a chance at the power you need, or train slowly and hope we have time we almost certainly don't have." Cale thought of the villages consumed by shadow. The thousands of people already dead or worse. The vision of the Shadow King's armies marching unopposed across his mother's burning city. "I'll do it," he said. "The ritual. Whatever it takes." Aldrich closed his eyes, pain crossing his weathered features. "Your mother asked me to protect you. This is the opposite of protection." "My mother sent me here for a purpose," Cale replied. "Not to be safe. To be ready. You said yourself, we're at war. And in war, safety is a luxury we can't afford." For a long moment, Aldrich was silent. Then he nodded, once, sharp and definitive. "Very well. We perform the ritual of awakening at moonrise. Theseus, prepare the chamber of convergence. I'll gather the other masters. We'll need all of them to maintain the containment field in case I lose control and explode," Cale finished. "Essentially, yes." Comforting. Despite the gravity of the situation, Aldrich almost smiled. "Your mother had the same dry wit. She used it to hide fear too." He gripped Cale's shoulder. "You have 6 hours until moonrise. Eat. Rest. Make peace with whatever gods you believe in. The ritual will tear you down to your essence and rebuild you. If your will falters, even for a moment, the process will consume you." As they left the oracle's chamber and ascended back toward the inhabited levels of the sanctum, Cale's mind raced. 6 hours until he either awakened his true power or died in agony. It seemed appropriate, somehow. His entire life had been building to moments like this, even when he didn't know it. They emerged into a corridor where several students were hurrying past, their faces alarmed. Seraphine was among them, and she stopped when she saw Aldrich. "Master, something's happening in Eldengard. The scrying pools are showing," she cut off, noticing Cale. Her expression hardened slightly, that familiar disdain creeping in, but she continued. Darkness. In the capital itself. Not just shadows at the borders anymore. The Shadow King's forces are inside the city. Aldrich cursed, a sharp word in a language Cale didn't recognize. Show me. They ran, all pretense of dignity abandoned, to a chamber Cale had glimpsed before during his descent. The scrying room. Dozens of pools of perfectly still water sat in carved stone basins, each one showing a different location across Eldoria and beyond. Students and masters crowded around one pool in particular, their faces illuminated by the silvery light emanating from the water. Aldrich pushed through, Cale right behind him, and looked into the pool. Cale's breath caught. The water showed Eldengard's main square, where he'd never been but recognized from descriptions. The beautiful fountain. The statue of the kingdom's founder. The grand cathedral with its soaring spires. And the shadow creature feeding on a screaming merchant. It was roughly humanoid in shape but wrong in every detail. Too tall, too thin, with limbs that bent at angles that shouldn't exist. Its skin, if it could be called skin, was not black but rather an absence, a hole in reality shaped like a body. Where it touched the merchant, the man's flesh seemed to dissolve into smoke that the creature inhaled hungrily. City guards surrounded it, shooting arrows and thrusting spears. The weapons passed through the shadow creature as if it were made of mist. It turned toward the guards, and even through the scrying pool, Cale could feel the malevolence radiating from it. The creature opened what might have been a mouth, and a wave of pure darkness exploded outward. Guards screamed, their torches extinguishing, their armor corroding to rust in seconds. They fell, and the creature moved to the next victim, and the next. Chaos spread through the square. People running, screaming, trampling each other in panic. More shadow creatures emerged from alleyways, from inside buildings, as if they'd been hiding in every dark corner waiting for a signal. How is this possible? One of the masters asked. The wards around Eldengard should prevent incursions. The king's court sorcerers maintained them for centuries. Maintained them with power they didn't truly understand. Thessir's voice came from the doorway. She must have followed them. Copied wards taught by the Luminari ages ago, but without the knowledge of how to refresh them properly. They've been degrading for decades. Now they're failing. The king has to act, Seraphine said. He has to mobilize the army, evacuate the city, something. As if in answer to her words, the scrying pool's view shifted, moving through the city to the royal palace. Through marble halls and golden doors, into the throne room where King Aldrich III, Cale realized with a start that the master was named after the king, or vice versa, sat on his throne, advisors clustered around him. The king was young, perhaps in his early 30s, with a carefully trimmed beard and intelligent eyes. But those eyes were clouded with uncertainty as he listened to multiple advisors all talking at once. Panic in the streets will kill more people than these shadow things. Need to show strength, not hide behind ancient magic we don't understand. Temple says this is judgment for our sins, we need to execute the heretics. Economic impact of a full mobilization would be devastating. Enough. The king's voice cut through the babble. Silence fell. Captain Mordran, report. How many casualties? A grizzled soldier stepped forward. 43 confirmed dead, Your Majesty. Another 100 wounded, many severely. The creatures, we can't fight them with conventional weapons. They're immune to steel, to fire, to everything we've tried. The Sanctum of Echoes, a woman in silver robes spoke up. Cale recognized the style. She was one of the messengers. They warned us this would happen. They have knowledge of these creatures, ways to fight them. The Sanctum is a cult, another advisor scoffed. Mystics and madmen pretending to ancient powers. We can't base policy on their delusions. "Those delusions are killing your citizens," the messenger shot back. "That's enough." King Aldrich III stood. He was tall, commanding, but Cale could see the weight of the crown bearing down on him. "We will increase patrols. Establish a curfew. Mobilize the city guard to full readiness. But I will not create kingdom-wide panic based on a handful of incidents." "A handful?" The messenger's voice rose. "Your Majesty, with respect, villages across the north have been completely destroyed. The darkness is spreading. This isn't a handful of incidents, it's an invasion." "Which is why I'm sending the army north to investigate," the king replied. "But I will not evacuate Eldengard based on superstition and fear. This meeting is concluded." The advisors bowed and began to file out. The messenger remained, her face tight with frustration and fear. "Your Majesty, please. Let me bring representatives from the sanctum. Let them explain." "No." The king's voice was final. "I've heard enough about ancient prophecies and shadow wars. We will handle this crisis with rational solutions, not by indulging mystics." The messenger's shoulders slumped. She bowed and left, and the scrying pool's image faded back to the chaos in the city square, where shadow creatures continued their feeding. "Fools," Aldrich muttered. "Proud, stubborn fools. They'll realize the truth when darkness is literally consuming their palace, and by then it will be too late." "Can we help them?" Cale asked. "Send our students to fight the creatures. And reveal the sanctum's location to every shadow spy watching Eldengard?" "No. We're hidden here for a reason. The moment we expose ourselves, the Shadow King will redirect his full attention to destroying us." Aldrich turned away from the pool. "This is the brutal calculus of war, Cale. We can't save everyone. We can only try to save enough that when the dust settles, something remains to rebuild." Cale stared at the image in the water. Watching people die. Watching shadow creatures hunt through streets that should have been safe. Feeling utterly powerless to stop it. 6 hours, he said quietly. "You said moonrise is in 6 hours." "Yes." "Then I need to prepare." Cale turned and walked from the chamber, his jaw set, his hands clenched into fists. Behind him, he heard Seraphine's voice, quiet but carrying. "He'll never survive the ritual. He can barely sustain basic channeling." "Perhaps," Aldrich replied. "Or perhaps desperation will unlock what training hasn't." His mother performed the ritual at age 15 and emerged as the most powerful luminary of her generation. His mother had been training since she could walk. True, but she also had something to fight for. Now, so does he. Cale walked through the sanctum's corridors without seeing them, his mind full of shadow creatures and burning cities and a mother he'd never known who had died to give him a chance. 6 hours until the ritual. 6 hours until he either became what he was meant to be or ceased to exist entirely. He found himself in the small quarters he'd been assigned, a simple room with a bed, a desk, and a window that looked out on an impossible vista. The sanctum existed partially outside normal space. The window didn't show real landscape, but rather a view into the spaces between realms, swirling colors, and distant lights that might have been stars or might have been entire worlds. Cale sat on the bed and, for the first time since arriving, let the weight of it all crash down on him. Fear, anger, grief for a life he'd lost and a destiny he'd never asked for. His hands shook. His breath came short and quick. Then he felt it, that silver energy that lived in his core, responding to his emotional turmoil. Instead of trying to control it or use it, he simply sat with it. Let it flow through him like a current. Felt it resonate with his heartbeat, his breathing, his very existence. This was part of him. Not a tool. Not a weapon. Him. Slowly, his breathing steadied. The fear didn't vanish, but it transformed into something else. Determination. Purpose. In 6 hours, he would either awaken or die. But either way, he wouldn't be the helpless farm boy who could only watch while others suffered. The mark on his shoulder began to glow, faint silver light seeping through his shirt. Cale closed his eyes and, for the first time, consciously reached toward the power instead of grasping at it desperately. The response was immediate. Light filled his body, flowing through channels he'd never perceived before, ancient pathways etched into his very essence. For just a moment, he touched something vast, the collected power of his bloodline, the legacy of the Luminari stretching back thousands of years, the light that had stood against darkness since the first war between realms. Then it faded, leaving him gasping but exhilarated. He could do this. He would do this. Somewhere above the sanctum, hidden by layers of reality and ancient wards, the sun moved across the sky toward the horizon. Somewhere in Eldengard, shadow creatures hunted and people died while their king debated policy. Somewhere in the spaces between realms, the Shadow King prepared his armies for total war. And in a small room in the Sanctum of Echoes, a young man who was both a farmer's son and a lost prince prepared to undergo a ritual that would either forge him into a weapon of light or destroy him completely. 6 hours until moonrise. 6 hours until everything changed. The countdown had begun.